You've done everything right. You train consistently, you eat deliberately, and at some point your results were good enough that naturally you tried to help someone else do the same. You gave them the framework, you shared the principles, you probably even trained alongside them for a while, and then it stopped working for them. The results plateaued, the progress stalled. That moment when your own success becomes unrepeatable is one of the most disorientating experiences you can have. Because if the model worked, it should work consistently. And if it didn't work consistently, either the model is wrong or the person is wrong, and you don't believe it's the person. You're right. It isn't the person, but it isn't the model either. Not exactly. It's something underneath the model. For decades, the fitness industry operated on what seemed like a total fact. Move more, burn more. It was logical, it was intuitive, and it was wrong. Wrong in the way that a foundational assumption is wrong, which means everything built on top of it was slightly off from the very beginning, until a researcher strapped monitoring equipment onto one of the last hunter-gatherer tribes on Earth and found something unexpected. What he found changed a lot about how we think exercise actually works. And more importantly, it changes everything about how you can make your results repeatable for someone else. Here's what nobody told you. The assumption that your body runs an open budget, that every calorie you burn in the gym gets added to the day's total, like a department that can always request more funding and expect it to be approved. That assumption, it turns out, is exactly what the science has proven wrong. Evolutionary anthropologist Herman Pontzer and his research on the Hadza people of Tanzania produced one of the most surprising findings in modern biology. The Hadza are incredibly active, no matter how you look at it. And when Pontzer measured their total daily energy expenditure using the gold standard doubly labeled water method, he found something that contradicted what the field assumed was true. Their total daily calorie burn was basically the same as that of sedentary Western adults. The body, it turns out, has a ceiling, and under normal conditions, exercise alone cannot reliably raise it. So imagine your body runs its energy like a company with a non-negotiable fixed budget. The total amount doesn't change quarter to quarter. What changes is the allocation. Push more into the exercise department and the CFO, your hypothalamus, starts making cuts across various departments at the same time. Hormone production gets trimmed, inflammatory response gets dialed back a bit, cellular maintenance gets pushed back. These cuts don't happen in a fixed order. Different bodies make different adjustments depending on their individual biology. Thing is, you never see the memo. You just wonder why the results stopped coming. Okay, the Hadza are compelling, but you're probably thinking they're too exotic to be relevant. Hunter-gatherers in Tanzania are a long way from your gym membership and your meal prep routine. So let's bring it closer to home. In multiple peer-reviewed studies tracking sedentary adults who began structured exercise programs for the first time, researchers found something that should have made the headlines but disappeared into academic journals. After 12 weeks of consistent training, a huge chunk of participants showed little to no significant weight loss. Not because they weren't exercising, but because their bodies had already begun compensating. The compensation didn't show up in the gym, it showed up everywhere else. Participants became less fidgety between sessions, they sat longer after workouts, they took elevators instead of stairs on rest days without consciously deciding to. Their non-exercise activity, the spontaneous, unconsidered movement that fills the gaps of a normal day, dropped in measurable and consistent proportion to the calories they were burning in structured training. The budget stayed balanced. And get this, the board never sent a memo. The cuts just happened. This is the pattern your model couldn't account for. Not because you missed something obvious, but because the compensation is designed to be invisible. Your body's CFO doesn't hold press conferences. It just reallocates. And the person you were guiding wasn't failing your model. Their body was running a perfectly optimized fixed budget that your open budget framework was never equipped to measure. There's a specific signature to compensation-driven plateaus, and once you know what it looks like, you'll never misread it again. It arrives quietly, often showing up somewhere between weeks 4 and 8 of a new intensified training program. And it looks, from the outside, exactly like a motivation problem or a dietary slip. It isn't. It's your body's fixed budget snapping back into equilibrium after the initial disruption of new exercise wore off. The signature has 3 components. First, the timeline. Results arrive in the early weeks, then flatline regardless of effort. Second, the behavioral shift. The person becomes more sedentary outside of structured exercise, not from laziness, but from the hypothalamus reducing the brain's drive towards spontaneous movement. Third, the emotional response. They begin to believe the problem is personal, something with their metabolism, their genetics, or their discipline, because the model they were given had no language for what was actually happening to them. All 3 components were present in the person you were guiding. You just didn't have the diagnostic framework to name them. So what does this mean practically? When someone you're guiding hits that wall, the correct response is not to increase the training load or to tighten their diet. Both of those interventions are asking the exercise department to spend more while the CFO is already making cuts elsewhere to keep the budget balanced. You're not solving the problem. You're accelerating the compensation. The diagnosis changes the prescription completely. The lever isn't what you do in the gym. It's what you do for the other 22 hours of the day. It's a natural result of the constrained energy model. If your body maintains a relatively fixed total energy budget, regardless of training intensity, then the variable that most reliably determines your long-term results isn't the quality of your sessions. It's the baseline level of movement your body considers normal when it isn't formally exercising. Raise that baseline consistently, and you shift the entire budget conversation without triggering the aggressive compensation response that concentrated exercise provokes. James Levine at the Mayo Clinic spent years studying what he called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's the energy burned through all the movement that isn't formal exercise. Walking between meetings, standing during calls, taking a single flight of stairs. On their own, these transactions are unremarkable, but across a full day the difference adds up a lot. Levine's research documented that variation between individuals at different ends of the activity spectrum. Structured exercise alone couldn't account for it, and no fitness tracker was designed to measure it specifically. This is the budget line your CFO has been cutting every time your exercise department overspends. Not dramatically, not all at once, gradually, invisibly, across the hours between your sessions. In Atomic Habits, James Clear argues sustainable behavior change doesn't happen at the level of strategy. It happens at the level of identity. You don't just adopt a new routine, you become a different kind of person. Applied to what the constrained energy model is telling us, the lever isn't simply adding more steps to your day as a tactic. It's rebuilding your identity from someone who exercises regularly to someone who moves constantly. Those are not the same person. The first person has a high exercise budget and an unknowingly defunded NEAT account. The second person has a movement baseline so consistently elevated that their body's compensation ceiling rises with it, not because they tricked the CFO, but because they changed what the CFO considers normal operating expenditure. For the person you've been trying to guide, this changes the prescription completely. The correct intervention isn't a harder training program or a tighter diet. The correct intervention is an environmental redesign, deliberately engineering their daily life so that constant low-level movement becomes the path of least resistance. Walk to the meeting instead of calling in. Stand during the debrief. Build the movement into the architecture of the day so it requires no willpower, no scheduling, because the evidence suggests your body doesn't compensate against who you consistently are, only against what you occasionally and intensely do. As Clear puts it, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What are you expected to do now? Don't change your training program. Don't adjust your diet. Don't overhaul anything. For the next 7 days, run one experiment. Every day at the same time, last thing before bed works well. Check your step count. Not your workout data, not your calories burned, just your total daily steps. Then do one thing with that number. Compare it to how hard you trained that day. That's it. That's the whole experiment. I'll even give you a document to assist you. See below for the link. What you are looking for is the pattern that the constrained energy model predicts with uncomfortable precision. On your hardest training days, your longest runs, your heaviest lifts, your most intense sessions, your total daily steps should, if the compensation mechanism is active, be noticeably lower than on your rest days or light training days. Not because you decided to move less, but because your hypothalamus reduced your drive towards spontaneous movement to balance the budget. You didn't feel it happening. You probably won't feel it happening. But 7 days of data should show you exactly where your CFO has been making the cuts you never approved. Then share this experiment with the person you've been trying to guide. Not as advice, not as a new program, but as a hypothesis to test together. Because the model you're building now isn't a universal prescription. It's a diagnostic tool. And the first step in using it well is collecting the data that shows you each person's individual compensation signature. That's the model that's actually repeatable. Not because it gives everyone the same answer, but because it asks everyone the right question. With the experiment still running, when the pattern shows up, and if the research is right, you'll see it. Drop your results in the comments. Not your weight, not your calories, just the pattern. I read every comment and your data point matters. While you're down there, answer one question honestly. When the model you handed someone else stopped working, what did you tell yourself was the reason? I would love to hear how you worked with it. Leave it below. In the next video, we're going to look at why winning might be the most dangerous thing that can happen to you. Not losing, winning. Subscribe. I'll see you there.